Hey Grace, have you registered to vote in Michigan?
Yeah, I'm registered for the ballot that's coming up on November 6th, right?
Yeah, I'm going home to vote soon. I was wondering if you heard about the new ballot proposal 18-1 about legalizing marijuana.
I mean, I've heard about it, but I don't fully understand it. I guess is it just gonna be like how marijuana is in Colorado?
Yeah, I think it's similar to that. So I'll explain it to you a little bit. It's like people who are 21 years of older will be able to buy marijuana, and also businesses will be able to sell it at like a retailer, but also you can only have up to 10 ounces on you. And people who have civil infractions now, their crimes can be reduced too. So yeah, I was wondering what you thought about this.
I don't know, I guess there's it's hard to outweigh the pros and the cons of it, but I think one of my biggest things is both of my brothers have had a past abuse of marijuana, and something that you always hear is that marijuana is a gateway drug and it can be addictive, but at the same time, if it's legalized, would that mean that it's not as tempting to use, and would people use it in smaller doses and not abuse it as much?
Yeah, well, sorry to hear about your brothers. That must be a really hard thing for you to talk about.
Yeah, so one of my brothers, my oldest brother, actually ended up being in jail for 6 months because of possession of both marijuana and heroin, and he wasn't selling, but those were drugs that he had for himself, and he has always said that if he had never started with marijuana, then he wouldn't have made it to a harder drug like heroin and other things like cocaine and stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good point about being a gateway drug. You said your brother ended up in jail for 6 months, and I feel like people maybe who are in jail for marijuana shouldn't be there, because things like rehab and actually getting the help they need would be so much better for them, actually help them. And then the courts and police would have time for other things like violent crimes, and have put their attention in places where it's actually needed.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, a lot of the people that are in the holding cells for jail are in there for things such as being pulled over on the road and they had a small amount of marijuana in their car, and then next thing they know they're in jail. But do they really belong in jail? Were they selling it? Were they using it for themselves? And that also goes into the whole idea of medical marijuana. So I mean, if it's legalized, maybe that would help some things.
Right, medical marijuana is one of the things about this proposal that makes me actually excited about it, because there's just so many medical conditions that can't be treated, or they haven't found treatment that helps, and marijuana can help a lot of those things, specifically anxiety, seizures, Crohn's disease, and it can help with pain and nausea and things that prescription drugs might actually be more dangerous than the marijuana. So that's one aspect that I think is good about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, you hear about it being, properly used to help people with cancer for their, ability to, maybe not get as sick from their radiation treatment, and especially with things like Crohn's disease, it could help a lot with, just the stomach pains and the anxiety and stress that comes along with it. But something that I think that you could look at as, a con, or people could argue, is the fact that marijuana can also elicit hallucinogenic states, and people can get drug-induced schizophrenia, and I actually even experienced it with my other brother when he was using marijuana, just a drug-induced schizophrenic phase, where a lot of people kind of form this obviously you get high when you use marijuana, but they kind of form this godly mindset when they use the marijuana, and that's something too that you have to worry about, is people could use it for medical reasons, but then it could also be abused, and people say they need it medically, but then get this schizophrenic.
Right, it can treat some things, but then make other medical conditions worse. Especially with mental health, I think it's scary when you're talking about, it can help anxiety, but then there's a point where it can make it worse also. And with schizophrenia and things, like the more you use it, the more you're prone to have a mental health illness.
Yeah, and too, if you think about, like, I mean, I've been to Colorado twice in the past year, and something that I keep hearing around there is they have a lot of problem with, like, road accidents, and there's been a lot more drug-related accidents after the legalization of marijuana compared to before the legalization.
Yeah, I see what you're saying about the potential problems with legalization, but also if you think about alcohol, like that's legal and probably just as dangerous as a substance as marijuana, and people still break the laws, like they still drink and drive, and what's to say people aren't gonna smoke just because it's illegal, like.
Yeah, my thing is too is it's like, you know, we have a regulation for alcohol and drinking and driving, and it's like, oh, you can't blow above a .08, but how could they monitor that for marijuana?
Yeah, like would it be the smell or like seeing it, but all those things are really hard to regulate also. So it's like we would have to think of rules and regulations to go along with the new proposal, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm glad we got the chance to sit down and talk about this, and I'm glad you registered to vote, most importantly, but thinking about the pros and cons of something as big as legalizing marijuana in Michigan, I think is really important for people our age.
Yeah.
Because it's going to affect us the rest of our lives.
For sure. And it's like something where it's like, does the good outweigh the bad, or does the bad outweigh the good?
Yeah.
And I feel like no matter what, you'll be able to see both sides, but just talking about it, even just with this little conversation, helped me think more about it and like whether or not I will vote, yes or no.
Yeah, and it definitely helped me have a better understanding of the dangers of legalization, especially with the things that happen to your brothers, and seeing different aspects is just so important, and hearing those stories. So I really appreciate you sharing those with me.
Yeah, thanks for talking with me and educating me a little more too.
Yeah, okay. See ya.
Bye.